Hey everyone, I'm Jack and welcome to the show. Today we have Elena with us.
Hi, everyone.
Elena is, well, she's an expert in language learning. Um, and we thought it'd be really great to kind of kick off the new year with her.
Yeah,
Um, Lots of people are thinking about goals and resolutions and stuff, and I think a lot of people probably thought at some point, like,
yeah,
I want to improve my English skills.
absolutely.
So Elena, what do you think is like maybe the first thing people should consider when they're kind of setting off on this journey?
Well, I think it's really important to think about why.
Okay.
Why do you want to learn English? What is it that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Is it to be able to travel to different places and speak to people?
Yeah.
Is it so you can enjoy your favorite TV shows or movies without subtitles?
Oh, yeah.
Figure out that why for yourself because that's going to be the thing that keeps you motivated.
Yeah. Like the good.
When you hit those road bumps, those moments where you feel like, this is hard. I don't know if I can do that. Right.
That why is going to be the thing that picks you back up and says,
Yeah.
come on, let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was learning Spanish,
Yeah.
I really wanted to be able to understand the music that I was listening to.
Oh, nice.
Like, I was listening to a lot of music in Spanish, but I didn't really know what they were saying.
Yeah.
And once I started learning, it just made the whole experience of listening to music so much better.
Totally.
Um, So, I think having that personal connection can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got that why.
Okay.
We know why we want to learn English.
Uh-huh.
What do I do next?
Well, I think it's all about finding ways to make English a part of your everyday life.
Okay.
So you want to kind of immerse yourself in it?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that you have to, suddenly switch everything in your life to English,
Right.
but start small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like maybe start with some children's cartoons.
Okay.
I always recommend Peppa Pig. It's like a classic.
Yeah. Easy to understand. The vocabulary is not too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually quite funny.
I've heard good things about Peppa Pig. I've never actually watched it myself, but
You should check it out.
maybe I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great idea. Because, if you start with something that's easy and fun,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And then you can gradually, work your way up to more challenging things.
Yeah. Exactly.
I remember when I was learning French,
Yeah.
I used to watch like movies with subtitles.
Nice.
And I found that was a really helpful way to kind of get used to the sounds of the language.
Yeah.
And, even though I didn't understand everything, I was still picking up on some of the words and phrases.
Exactly. And the more you listen, the more your brain starts to recognize those patterns.
Right.
And becomes easier to understand.
And then speaking of speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that a lot of people find really intimidating. Because, you're putting yourself out there, you're making yourself vulnerable.
It's scary.
Yeah, it can be scary. And I know I've definitely felt that way before.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips for people who are kind of struggling with that fear of speaking?
I think the most important thing is to remember that everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
It's part of the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody expects you to be perfect.
Right.
So try not to be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And just focus on getting those words out.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you make a mistake, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that I found really helpful when I was first learning English
Okay.
was to practice speaking, even when I was by myself.
Okay.
So, like talking to the mirror
Mm-hmm.
or just describing what I was doing.
Interesting.
It might sound a little bit silly,
Yeah.
but it really helps you to get comfortable with the sounds of the language.
I could see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I found helpful was using language exchange apps.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
So there are these apps where you can connect with people who are learning your native language.
Yeah,
And they want to practice English, and you can kind of help each other out.
exactly. And it's a really fun way to meet people from all over the world.
Yeah, it's like a built-in accountability partner.
Exactly.
So, I think that can be really helpful too.
Absolutely.
We're immersing ourselves in English. We're practicing speaking.
Yeah.
What about vocabulary?
Vocabulary.
Yeah, because I remember when I was first starting out, I would look at these huge vocabulary lists, and I would just feel so overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah. It can be daunting.
Yeah, it's like, how am I ever going to learn all of these words?
Yeah.
So do you have any tips for kind of making that process a little bit less intimidating?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key is to focus on the vocabulary that's actually relevant to you.
Okay.
So think about your hobbies, your interests, the things that you like to talk about, and start with the vocabulary that you need to be able to talk about those things.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, for example, if you're really into cooking,
Yeah.
you could start by learning the English words for different ingredients or cooking techniques,
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then as you learn more vocabulary, you can start to expand your horizons and learn words for other things.
Right.
But don't try to learn everything at once.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so that's a good tip for kind of choosing which words to learn.
Yeah.
But what about actually learning them?
Okay.
Like, how do we make sure that we're actually remembering these words?
Well, there are lots of different techniques that you can use.
Okay.
One classic method is flashcards.
Yeah.
You can write the word on one side and the definition on the other side,
Uh-huh.
and then you can just quiz yourself.
Right.
And there are also lots of apps that you can use now
Okay.
that use flashcards and other methods to help you learn vocabulary.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. They look pretty cool.
Yeah, they can be really helpful.
So we're learning all these new words,
Uh-huh.
but how do we actually use them?
Well, that's the most important part, right?
Right.
Because if you're not using the vocabulary that you're learning, then it's not really going to stick.
Yeah, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other.
Exactly.
So do you have any suggestions for how we can kind of put these new words into practice?
Yeah, I think it's all about finding opportunities to use English in real life situations.
Okay.
So, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country, there are still ways that you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you could try writing a journal in English.
Okay.
Or you could try sending emails or text messages to friends in English.
Right.
Just find little ways to incorporate English into your daily life.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because, the more you use it,
Yeah,
the more natural it's going to feel.
exactly.
And I remember when I was learning Italian, I used to try to think in Italian as much as possible.
Nice.
And that was really challenging at first,
It is challenging.
but it really helped me to kind of get over that hump of translating everything in my head.
Absolutely.
So, I think that's a good tip too.
Yeah.
So this is all really great advice, Elena. I
Sorry.
think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
And I think our listeners are probably feeling a lot more confident about their ability to improve their English skills.
I hope so.
So before we wrap up for today, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think the most important thing is just to remember that learning a language is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a destination.
Right.
So be patient with yourself, enjoy the process,
Yeah.
and celebrate your successes along the way.
I love that. That's great advice.
Uh-huh.
Elena, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
Welcome back, everyone. So we were talking about all these great ways to level up your English skills.
Yep.
But, I think it's also important to remember that learning a language takes time.
It does.
It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah, it's a process.
It is a process, and sometimes, you can feel like you're not making any progress.
Absolutely.
I know I've definitely felt that way before.
Me too.
Like when I was learning German,
Uh-huh.
I spent months and months just kind of like plugging away at it, and I felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
But then one day I was watching a movie in German,
Okay.
and I realized that I was actually understanding most of what they were saying.
Wow.
And it was just like this moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm actually making progress.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. So, I think it's important to just be patient with yourself and trust the process.
I think patience is key.
It is key. And,
Yeah.
celebrate those little victories along the way.
Absolutely.
So speaking of making progress, what are some things that we can do to kind of help our English skills grow faster?
Well, one thing that I always recommend is finding a language partner.
Okay.
So this could be a friend or a family member or even someone that you meet online
Mm-hmm.
who also wants to practice their English.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of get together and chat,
Right.
maybe once a week or however often you can manage it.
I like that because it's like you're kind of keeping each other accountable,
Exactly.
and you're also, getting to practice in a real life situation.
Exactly. And you can learn from each other.
Yeah.
You can point out each other's mistakes
Right.
and help each other to improve.
And speaking of mistakes,
Mhm.
I think that's something that a lot of people are really afraid of.
Oh, absolutely.
They're so worried about making mistakes
Mm.
that they're almost afraid to speak at all.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think it's important to remember that making mistakes is actually a good thing.
It's a really good thing.
It is. It's how we learn.
Yeah.
If you're not making mistakes, then you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like when you're learning to ride a bike,
Uh-huh.
you're going to fall off a few times.
Right.
But that's how you learn to balance.
Yeah, and eventually you get to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. It
Exactly.
just becomes natural.
It's like second nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Don't be afraid.
Embrace them.
Embrace those mistakes. They're your friends.
They are your friends. They're helping you to learn.
Exactly.
So we've talked about finding a language partner and embracing our mistakes. What else can we do to improve our English?
Well, another really important thing is to read.
Oh, yeah.
Reading is so important.
I love to read.
It's so good for your vocabulary,
It is.
your grammar, your pronunciation.
And it's just fun.
It is fun.
Like you can just kind of get lost in a good book.
And it's a great way to relax.
It is.
At the end of the day, just curl up with a good book and escape from the world for a little bit.
Yeah. And, you don't have to read like super serious literature.
Yeah. No.
You can read whatever you enjoy.
Absolutely.
If you like comics, read comics.
Yeah.
If you like magazines, read magazines.
If you like celebrity gossip magazines, read those.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever floats your boat.
Exactly.
So reading is important.
Yeah.
What about listening?
Listening is also really important.
Yeah, because I think sometimes people kind of neglect the listening part.
They do.
But it's just as important as speaking and reading and writing.
Absolutely. It's how you learn to understand spoken English.
Right.
Which is essential if you want to be able to communicate with people.
Exactly.
And there are so many great resources available for listening practice these days.
Okay. Like what?
Well, you've got podcasts.
Yeah.
You've got audiobooks.
Right.
You've got YouTube videos.
Right.
You can find pretty much anything that you're interested in.
I love podcasts.
Me too.
Listen to podcasts all the time.
They're so convenient.
They are.
You can listen to them while you're commuting or working out or doing chores around the house.
Exactly. And there are so many different podcasts out there.
So many.
That you're bound to find something that you're interested in.
Yeah. Whatever you're into.
Exactly.
There's a podcast for you.
So we've talked about reading and listening.
Yeah.
What about writing?
Writing is also really important because it helps you to develop your grammar skills and it also helps you to learn how to express yourself in English.
Right.
And again, there are lots of different ways that you can practice writing.
Okay. Like what?
Well, you could start by keeping a journal in English. You could write emails or letters to friends.
Okay.
You could even try writing short stories or poems.
Interesting.
Yeah, just get creative with it.
I like that.
And don't worry too much about making mistakes.
Right.
Let's focus on getting your thoughts down on paper.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, sometimes people get so caught up in trying to be perfect that they end up not writing anything at all.
Exactly. And it's more important to just write than it is to write perfectly.
So just get those words out.
Get those words out.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
Experiment.
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, I love that. So I think we've covered a lot of really great tips today for how to improve your English skills.
We have.
And I hope that our listeners are feeling inspired and motivated to keep learning.
Me too.
We've been talking about lots of different ways to learn and practice English.
Yeah.
But, I think it's also important to remember that there are a lot of resources available out there.
Tons of resources.
That can kind of help you along the way.
Yeah.
So, if you're feeling stuck or you're not sure where to start,
Yeah.
there are definitely people and things that can help you.
Absolutely.
So what are some of your favorite resources, Elena?
Well, if you're a visual learner, YouTube is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many channels that are dedicated to teaching English.
I love YouTube.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I watch YouTube all the time.
Me too.
And I've learned a lot of my English from YouTube.
Nice.
Just watching videos and listening to people speak.
Yeah, it's free for that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great resource.
And there's such a variety, too.
Wow.
You can find anything you like.
Like, I love to watch cooking videos.
Oh, nice.
And I feel like I'm learning new vocabulary and improving my English at the same time.
Absolutely.
So, it's a win-win.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
And if you're more of an auditory learner, podcasts are a great option.
I love podcasts.
Yeah, me too.
I listen to podcasts all the time.
They're so easy to fit into your day.
Yeah. You can listen to them while you're commuting or walking the dog or doing the dishes.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, there are so many different podcasts out there.
Tons.
That you're bound to find something that you're interested in.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there are also apps.
Oh, yeah. Apps are great.
Yeah, there are tons of language learning apps.
So many.
And they can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite apps?
Yeah, I really like Duolingo.
I've heard of Duolingo.
It's a fun app.
Yeah.
It uses games and quizzes and things like that to teach you vocabulary and grammar.
I like that it makes it fun.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't feel like you're studying.
Right.
It just feels like you're playing a game.
And another good one is Memrise.
Okay.
They use a technique called spaced repetition, which is really effective for memorizing vocabulary.
Yeah, I've heard of spaced repetition.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Like it shows you the words at certain intervals to kind of help you remember them.
Yeah, so it starts by showing you the word frequently.
Okay.
And then as you start to learn it, it shows it to you less and less often.
Interesting.
But just at the right time to make sure that you don't forget it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I've heard of, but I haven't actually tried myself.
Yeah.
Are these online language exchange platforms?
Oh, yeah, those are awesome.
So can you tell me a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so basically they connect you with people from all over the world
Okay.
who are learning your native language and who want to practice speaking English.
So it's kind of like a language partner, but online.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, and you can either chat with them through text or you can have video calls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can actually practice your speaking skills.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to connect with people from different cultures.
And to improve your English.
And to improve your English.
That's like a win-win-win.
It is.
I love it. So, okay, so we've talked about YouTube and podcasts and apps and language exchange platforms.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many resources available.
There are.
It can be kind of overwhelming.
It can.
Like, where do you even start?
Well, I think the best advice that I can give is to just try different things.
Okay.
And see what works for you. Because not every resource is going to be a good fit for every person. You know, some people might really love Duolingo.
Yeah.
Other people might find it really boring. So it's really just about experimenting.
Okay.
Finding what you enjoy.
Yeah. And, I think it's also important to remember that you don't have to use every resource out there.
No.
You can just pick and choose the ones that you think are going to be most helpful for you.
Absolutely.
And then I think the most important thing is to just be consistent.
Yes.
Even if you're only spending 15 minutes a day practicing your English, if you do it every day, it's going to make a big difference
Absolutely.
over time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just be patient with yourself.
Be patient.
And celebrate those small victories.
Celebrate every little win.
And most importantly, have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah, because if you're not enjoying the process, then you're less likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
So find ways to make it fun.
Make it enjoyable.
And I think you'll be surprised at how much progress you can make. So Elena, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
It was my pleasure.
This has been a really helpful conversation.
I hope so.
And I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of it.
I hope they do.
So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.